webinar in our 10-part series of What's New in GP 2013. The agenda for today is to review the highlights of what's new in the Accounts Payable portion of the new version. I am going to be brave and I'm going to demo using the web client. And my disclaimer is it is brand new. We've just about got it installed and are beginning to learn the features of it. But I thought you would all be curious to see not just some GP 2013 features, but what that looks like in the web client that has been introduced with this new version. And then at the end of displaying the new features, I'm going to leave time for Q&A and try to address your questions. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to review the navigation and some general features of the new version. So I'm going to be tabbing back and forth between the PowerPoint and the application, so bear with me a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go home. And I'm going to actually display the navigation pane. And welcome to the GP 2013 web client homepage. There are a few things here that I just want to show you that were Accounts Payable specific. Notice I've got a couple of metrics here, top 10, 510 vendors, notice Microsoft. And by the way, we're dealing, you're looking at our own old converted data. So if you see old accounts payable, we really do pay our bills. It's just that this is old data. So if you look at any aging reports on old data, just like in Fabricam, it's not going to look right. So I've picked a couple of metrics, and how I did that is I went to customize this page. Now you have customize this page functionality now, and you do have metrics now, but instead of the metrics that you have in GP 2010, you now have the Business Analyzer. And if I click on this button, I have all of my available Business Analyzer reports. And they're all written in SQL reporting services. So I've selected two. I've selected the order. I can hit Move Up and say OK. I've also noticed one other thing is the column stack to the right. And I'll show you that in a minute and what that means. So if I decide I want to expand my quick links, notice all the other tiles stack over to the right and my quick links is expanded. I also have the ability to move things around on the page. And I don't think this Web Connect is working right with the GP browser. We probably just haven't implemented that or enabled that in the web browser, but it should be working. And that's all I want to show you with the home page. Very similar looking to what you have now, but again, it's purely a web interface. You can access this from anywhere. And it does have a little bit more flexibility than I believe what you're accustomed to. I'm going next to the Payables page. You're going to see the same thing. You're going to see the navigation pane to the left that you're familiar with. But now we're going to see the different sections of the purchasing series in tiles. The same type of thing, you can actually move the tiles around. And notice I'm not too good at that yet. But you can move the order. You can expand one particular tile, and the others will stack over to the right. You can also go to customize this page for the first time, and you can choose which sections you can display on your page. Keep in mind the individual selections in these sections are still very much controlled by the user role security in GP 2013 as well as what existed in GP 2010. A few other things. One of the first things I tried to discover was how you launch Smart List in the new version or the web client version of GP 2013. And I found I had to go to one of these pages, such as the purchasing or sales or financial pane, and click on Smart List Favorites. Once you do, it does launch it, and you can just minimize it. And notice as you open different windows, they're all going to be stacked across the bottom. You can open your payables batches from here. You can open your vendors from this window as well. And again, some of this is functionality you already have, but I want to point out. The other thing that you already have of functionality in GP 2010, but I believe that something that you're going to want to increasingly explore with GP 2013 are the SQL reporting services reports. And these are versions of the what I consider the ugly Dynamics GP character-based reports that were written back in the 1990s. And I'm just going to launch one of them for those of you who are not used to working with the SSRS or SQL Reporting Services reports. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to click on View. I'm going to say View it by vendor name. Okay. I now have my aging report in SSRS. I can click the plus sign and actually look at the individual invoices. But I can also at this point print it to a PDF, send the data out to Excel, and it goes out much easier and just better formatted than it does in the typical Dynamics GP character-based reports right now. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show you, and this is something that I've never seen in any other Windows program to date, is the ability to open two windows. I'm going to be using our copier company. And I'll go back to the Smart List and actually tile them side by side. You can have multiple windows open. It's just a function of how large your monitor is. And very similar to what you used to with Office 2013, where, for instance, you can have your two Excel spreadsheets easily tiled side by side. You can do this now with the windows in the web client in GP 2013 and only in the web client. So not only is the web client available, but it actually features some functionality that you do not have in the traditional GP client. I'm just going to close that. Okay. Now I'm going to show you vendor document attach, and for that I do need to go to the traditional GP 2013 client because that is not enabled yet in the web client. Oops, sorry about that. So here's your GP 2013 client. Similar look and feel to the web client. And I'm going to open my vendor card. And I'm going to open Aaron Fitz, whom you all know and love. And now you have a new feature called Document Attach. And I'm going to click Attach. And I'm going to pick Security Planning. And I'm going to say OK. And if you're used to going the old way, which is through the OLE notes, where you would go in here and then you would click Attach, and then you would do insert new object, and so on and so forth, you'll see that document attach is a much quicker, faster way to attach documents. And the advantage of attaching documents is they're stored in the SQL database, and you can open them at will. I will use a disclaimer here that that document attach has not been rolled out to all of the windows in GP. But I do anticipate as new features come on board with new service packs, we're going to see this document attach expanded throughout the system. Go back to here. Okay. I'm going to also show you in the web client what that new feature and functionality looks like in the web client. In vendor maintenance, the first thing you're going to see is that the icons are more updated as opposed to the ones that came out in 1994, from when I became a Microsoft Dynamics reseller, one of the first 100. You'll also see now, instead of buttons across the bottom, that you've got tabs. A much more updated look, I think much more streamlined. And I can just move all the way through. The other thing I'm going to show you is the assign report. You now can select SQL Reporting Services reports, and you can assign those reports to certain windows. And again, I think we're going to see more of that functionality rolled out through the system. It's available right now in certain areas. And again, once you run the report, you can print it to a PDF. You can send it to Excel. You have a lot more options in terms of exporting the report. Now I'm going to move over to the Accounts Payable transaction entry window. And a few things, there are some new icons. You're going to see the analytical accounting icon in a different place, and some other window level fields in another place as well. And for the first time, you can change the remit to address in the Accounts Payable transaction window. I'm going to pull up an invoice from my favorite vendor here. Whoops, sorry, I'm in the wrong window. Transaction entry. Okay. So again, you're going to see different, all the icons up here. Instead of the window level note being at the bottom and the help being at the bottom, it's up top. They've moved the print functionality up here as well. And you'll see analytical accounting. Now, this transaction does not have an AA record attached to it, so I can't open the window, but if I did, I can actually look at how this invoice was distributed. The other thing you're going to see in here, in the distributions window, is the default that you're used to seeing down here has been moved up. And again, all of the icons are up top. And finally, you can actually edit the remit to address as you're putting a transaction now. But do keep in mind, if I click remit to address here and I want to make changes, this is actually at the vendor level, not at the transaction level. So it will permanently update that service address for this invoice and all invoices going forward for that vendor. I'm going to now review the remaining other new features, and these are, I'm saving the best for last, I believe. So on the Edit Transactions window, as you know right now, you have the ability to, right now in your current version, to edit the discount date, the due date, the PO number, and the description. But now you can also, if you put in the wrong remit to address, you can put the right remit to address in before you pay the bill. And keep in mind, GP automatically will segregate invoices by remit to address. So if you select one vendor with invoices with two different remit to addresses, you're going to get two different checks. You can also now recreate a check stub. So if a vendor calls and wants to know what invoices were paid on a particular invoice, and just give me a minute to just put in a restricted date range because this particular vendor has been with us for a long time. And if I go down to historical payment here, and if I go to voucher payment number, I can now run recreate check stub, and it'll actually list out the invoices that were paid. Now, for those of you who know me, you know I always give you the good and the bad. Notice the invoice amount is $500 and the amount paid is $435. Well, there was a credit memo of $65 that I put against this because I'm using this particular example for more than one purpose. And this stub out of the box that I ran does not show the credit memo on the remittance. I'm still investigating that. I'm also exploring whether the McCormick Micker product that we pretty much install at most clients has their own version of the reprint check remittance, and if it does, include the credits. But I didn't want to hide that from you either. So that's recreate check stub. Now I'm going to show you the void transactions, and this is something I have to tell you we've been waiting for probably since Dynamics GP released these two features and functions that are very, very badly needed. The first one is for the first time, and it's still coming up in painting information, but it's actually for the first time going to show whether or not a check I'm trying to void has been reconciled or not. And that's something that we've had clients do. It has created issues in the past. You still won't be stopped from voiding a check that's been reconciled in the bank rec module, but it will show you that it was reconciled to keep you from doing it. And I believe that is really a very important new enhancement. Well, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the void check. And just give me 1 minute. Just 1 second. There we go. And I want to go back one slide. Okay. So I'm going to show you now what void checks does in this version. So I'm going to put in that check number 107,522. And 107,522. My numlock was off. It wasn't reconciled. I'm going to click on this for ABM, and I'm going to click void. And you'll notice that the performance actually is not too bad on this. And keep in mind, this is set up in a lab environment in our system that I'm connected to via VPN. So we're kind of jumping through hoops to get to it. And we still have fairly decent performance with this web client. So I avoided that. Now if I go to my open transactions, and I put in, or actually, let's just go to back to transaction by vendor again. If I go to ABM here, again I put in by document date. There's my $500 invoice, and there's my credit memo. Until this version, when you voided a check, it pulled back the invoices net of the credit memo applied. Now with this version, it will pull back the original invoice at the original amount plus the credit memo. The final thing I'm going to show you in our features and functionality is in the routines, print 1099. For those of you who are not-for-profits, you now can print a 1096 form, and that is a new feature. And that concludes my presentation. Give me 1 second. I am now going to look at the questions that you have. And Scott, I think I need you to help me here. All right, so the first question I see is, do we have any clients on the web client yet, and what modules are available? Right now, absolutely not. We're the only client with the web client, and we're using that in our test environment. There's quite a bit of hardware, and not so much hardware, but software requirements, because you do need, I asked, and I know there's some other components, and I'm not the technical person to answer that, but there are certain components that you need. The other reason we wouldn't have anybody on it yet is it's just too new. Service Pack 1 is releasing for GP 2013 next month. I suspect by the summer we'll begin to see interest in the web client. I do think that within a couple of years we're going to see increased use of it. I think it's a great sign for the future of Dynamics GP, and I also think it's going to truly expand its appeal throughout in the market. But it's not quite there yet, but I still thought it was a pretty cool thing to show you. And I think that's the only question. Okay. One other thing I discovered, for those of you who want to hang in for another minute, which I'm not sure is a documented feature or not, but I was playing with this, and I put in ABM, and then I realized, oops, I wanted to put in a credit memo. Now in GP 2013, in the web client, I noticed I could change the document type without having to go and delete the transaction. So whether it's an undocumented feature or just some functionality that maybe wasn't planned, I don't know. But actually, I think it's a real benefit to the web client. Now, the only other thing I have for you is next steps. So what I'd recommend you do is go to our 2013 webpage and begin to look at all of the other information that we have. And we'll continue to update that website with new information as it comes in. matter of fact, we'll include the news that the service pack will be releasing very shortly. And it is supposed to have new features as well. So even the features and functions we're showing you will be expanded on as we go forward, and we'll continue to keep you apprised of that information. And feel free to contact us at CriticalEdge Group with any other questions, and thank you for attending.